next panel up, which is queer activism and mentorship in Asia. For this panel, there's going to be me, and my description says Veg Brittany Stan, and that's one food that I like the most. And in my free time, I like to engage with and provide as much as I can to underrepresented and underprivileged groups in tech in particular. And other than that, I work at an analytics firm in Bombay, which is where Parmesh and Aditya and everyone, and Shubha also is from. We are going to have Nathan and Shubha during this panel discussion. Nathan represents the Queer State Alliance and the Fruits and Suits mentorship program from Hong Kong. He is the chairperson of the committee, and Shubha is the executive director of Solidarity Foundation. It's an NGO that supports grassroots level organization of gender and sexual minorities and sex workers by building collectives, capacities, and connections. She has been recognized as a global diversity leader, Times Ascent Award at World HRD Congress in Mumbai in 2017. Uh, it would be really great to have them speak about their organizations. Shubha, over to you.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. And it's great to, I mean, I don't know, it's great to come after Parmesh, but it's also intimidating because Parmesh just is
I
so
agree.
charming. But I must also make a quick plug for his book because uh, I think the way he wrote the book, it's not just very queer, but it's also extremely inclusive. All the people come alive. They don't remain just names like in an academic book, you refer to this one or that one. But here, all of them come alive as personalities with their little quirks, with their strengths, with whatever else. So it's a breezy read, but it's also rich and, so must read. Parmesh, 10% commission for me on the site. So now that I've worked out my commission with Parmesh. Anyway, so you must buy the book, and it's a great book. But anyway, to come back to what we do very quickly is I've been working, with uh, the gender and sexual minorities or the LGBT, or I, IAQ has come later, but so I've been working with the queer community for about 20 years, and it started, of course, as a personal journey again of meeting somebody who was gay many years ago, and thinking at that point that this is the first gay person I've met. Not true, of course, but you know. But what we realized over the years was that the leadership and the momentum or the movement was largely based in cities. And we found through our work that actually there was a lot of spark and a lot of different kinds of stuff happening in small towns. They just didn't have support. They just didn't have channels. They didn't have someone who'll make the connection for them, someone who'll amplify their voice, somebody who, give them a little bit of money, a little bit of other kinds of, mainly hope, building trust, building relationships. And so that's why we started to uh, do what we do, which is we build what we say that we build capacities. That means we build the ability of leaders to access their rights and entitlements. We build connections because I think as middle class people, one of our main things is that we have a lot of connections. So how do people who are at the periphery, who are at the margins, build their own connections? So that's the other thing that we do, that we build connections between people, and we think both people stand to gain. We think of ourselves as bridges which allow the flow of ideas, knowledge, etc. Both sides of the bridge we think gain. So it's not us versus them, but we learn. It's a learning teaching kind of model that we work on.
That was lovely. Thank you so much for introducing Solidarity Foundation to us and sharing what motivated you. And it was really nice to hear that. Next up, Nathan, would you like to tell us about the Queer State Alliance, as well as in the next slide I have fruits in suits as well.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And it's a treat to listen to everybody who's spoken already. I'm in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong has, we're lucky to have many LGBT organizations that focus on different aspects of, uh, of queer life. The Queer Straight Alliance is a student organization that is one organization that is at every university in Hong Kong. So whatever university in Hong Kong, you can be part of the QSA, Queer Straight organization. And so they advocate to support LGBT initiatives and education initiatives and advocates for inclusion both on campus and off. Another organization that we have in Hong Kong is called Fruits and Suits, which it's undergoing a name change right now to be more inclusive, because not just suits, but it's a monthly networking event for professionals that basically not students, but the folks who are already working here in society, in Hong Kong society. And so while it started as a monthly networking event, it's grown over the years to encompass much more people than just suits, just people who are working. And so one of the, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, a mentorship program was started. All it took was a spark from a few people who said, hey, what can we do to help future generations in Hong Kong society here to further LGBT causes? And they started a pilot mentorship program. Today, the mentorship program that we run, which is the QSA Fins mentorship program, we have 65 mentors from across many different industries in Hong Kong and 68 mentees who are students at the universities here who are participating. Mm-hmm. And actually, it echoes some of the benefits of the program were echoed by what previous speakers have said, but the program is more career focused with the idea of hopefully giving the LGBT mentees resume suggestions, interview skills, sharing, listening from other queer professionals who've had experience in job search, their struggles, their suggestions. So it helps the students gain perspective and confidence before they go out into the business world, how to navigate a professional setting, not just professional setting, but also on the social aspect as well. So how, do you feel safe coming out to family and friends? What are the challenges and benefits of doing so? A relationship sounding board, just basically a safe queer space where you can, that's not family, that's not school, not someone you're around all the time, that can listen to you. So mentors gain from this as well. Aside from giving back from the community, they can learn what are the current topics with students that they might be a few years removed from now if they've been, if they're 60 years old and they've been out of college for several years. So they can learn what's the thoughts and challenges faced by current students. And they can learn about how to best give back and shape their organizations and themselves to help and encourage more applications from future queer employees.
That's amazing, having such a big network and creating impact, especially as times are changing. And this is definitely a thing that's required today. So how we were thinking of going through this panel was that we have a few talking points and we will go through those one by one, and Shubha and Nathan can share their perspectives and their answers sort of to those questions, and they can give whatever they have seen or real life examples or anything that they're comfortable with respect to Hong Kong and Mumbai in particular, or even any other place. So what one of the Q&A members suggested was that we can put backgrounds of primary events that have happened with respect to LGBTQ people. And this one is from the Pride Parade in Mumbai, in India, in 2017, near the August Kranti Maidan. And the question is, in your experience, what major challenges have been faced by Asian queer folks in particular and around you, if there's any examples that you can give?
So do you want me to go first, Sandeep, or do?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm from Bangalore. I'm not from Mumbai. There's a small correction. I'm from the
Oh, I'm
south
so
of it,
sorry. Okay.
but that doesn't matter. Mumbai is my second favorite city. So, um, so I think you know the challenges, like in most places, are to do with family, is to do with the workplace, it's to do with employment. But I think also currently, I think there's also you know um, growing intolerance in the country. As dissident has become very difficult. So I think that anyone who doesn't fall, I mean, we are, there is more and more, I mean, there is like ordinance passed against interfaith marriages now in some states in India. So if this continues, this kind of intolerance, which is growing at one end, then I think, for queer folks not to think about it and not to worry about that would be a big mistake, because, you know, uh, this is a real danger, and I think it's important to take note of it and look at that. That is on top of or along with other kinds of age-old prejudices due to patriarchy, heteronormativity, and the rest of it, which have always existed. But but of course we'll come to what's going well as well, because all is not doom and gloom. But um, I just wanted to say that these challenges translate to things like, for example, I mean, in the work we do, we had one trans woman who we had placed, sent in for a job. She'd gotten to an interview, but when she went to the company, where the interview was to be, the security guard turned around and said, "Oh, we know what about people like you. Don't come into this office." And she tried to explain that she had an interview there. And he said, "There's no way people in this big company, it's big corporate, they're not going to talk to people like you. Forget interviewing." You know? So if you can't even get into the company for the interview because the security guard doesn't even think you're worthy of it, where is the chance of an equal playing ground at all? So the prejudice is about that. It's about not able to use a bus. For example, I was with a trans woman who was traveling on a bus, and I kept calling her and she kept cutting my call. And I was like, why is she not talking to me? I have something urgent to tell her. And later, when I asked her what happened, she said, I was sitting in the women's seat of the bus, and I was scared that if I spoke, people would hear my voice, and I wasn't sure what would happen to me. And I don't know how to read and write, so I couldn't send you a text. You see, so it's a combination of many things. It's about being poor. It's about being having low levels of literacy. It's about being trans. It's all of these together that puts you in that situation where you're feeling fearful. So it's that. It's about everyday events that remind you, because in some cases, if you have some money, you can live in a slightly fancy apartment in urban India, and at least the neighbors will pretend to tolerate you. At least they will pretend to. But if you're living in a slum or an informal settlement, then there is no space for any private space. Everything is, people are in and out of your house. They know everything about you. So then they are going to ask, who's that person? Why is he visiting you so often? What's happening with you? Why aren't you married? And all kinds of other questions. So it's these everyday challenges and everyday fears and everyday violence that I think is also important. Yeah, I'll end with that for now. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and jump in and to keep answering your question of major challenges that have been faced by Asian queer folks around. A lot of the answers that I was thinking about have strong overtones to what Shubha just mentioned and to what Parmesh and Diana and Gwen have also mentioned as well. So I think these run cross cultures, cross countries. But a few of them that I've heard from many folks in Hong Kong and also in China, just as was mentioned, conservative family values. In Hong Kong and in China, that means pressure to marry opposite sex couple and produce a child. There's a lot of pressure to get a high-paying job and support your family. And that's not just on queer children, that's also on straight children, that's everybody. But it's those conservative family values that that everybody's born into that feels oppressive to many queer folks here. My cat would like to join the conversation. But not only that, but there's conservative government and local businesses, which we've mentioned too, but there's oppressive leadership that have set policies that are discriminatory and non-inclusive. And so there's a real push by a lot of local organizations here to change those policies or to include more diversity and inclusion. But I'll give you an example of the denial that exists. A lot of the international companies who follow Western HR practices get it and have diversity and inclusion policies already written in. However, a lot of the struggles are Chinese or Hong Kong companies don't have those diversity and inclusion policies. And one example is we were having a conversation on best practices for diversity and inclusion, and with the idea of saying, the more diverse a workplace, the more inclusion for queer employees there are, the better products you'll get, and how that's just good business, as Pramesh mentioned. However, the feedback we got from one of the state-run companies in China said, we don't have that queer problem. It's different than what Western companies might have. And I remember saying, oh, that's interesting. You don't have the queer problem. How many employees do you have? And I said, oh, we have 15,000 employees. And not one of them's queer. Not one, nope, not even one. So stepping back and realizing the amount of denial, the amount of education that needs to happen, on a business level, but also on a personal level, it's very difficult. So so those are some of the challenges. For Hong Kong, another interesting thing is a lot of people, including when I arrived to Hong Kong, I thought it was an extremely international city, multiple cultures all coming together and working towards together. And it is in certain areas. But what I found out from working and volunteering and getting connected is that the farther away from the business district you get, the more conservative it is. There's a lot of religious influences. There's a lot of folks that don't have even enough finances to go into mainland China for a few weeks study programs. So that brings into play finances and pressure from families to, like I said, get a good paying job, high paying job, to support the family, to get married, to have a kid. And it's difficult. All these systems have been set up, and it's extremely challenging to work to rectify it. So we talked about financial security, public health. If there's no talking about LGBT policies in healthcare, then there's no open discussion about sexual protection, frequent STI testing, shame or underground. It moves the discussion underground, and there's not as much knowledge shared in schools or included on with insurance companies as well. So, or to have everything included in public health insurance. So the discussion needs to be moved above board and out and proud. So those are a few of the challenges. And so not to get depressed, those are all the challenges. But I think that in a future question, we can talk about positive things.
Yeah, definitely we'll get to that. And what I can take from everything, all the stories that you've shared and stuff like that, is that this challenge is not just being queer. It's the entire system. It's so many socioeconomic factors that come into play, and if if the community is not recognized, it's very difficult to make change at a systemic level. So definitely that's one thing. And we can go to the next question, which is sort of a follow-up. uh, Before that, a little bit about the background picture here. It's taken in Taiwan. It was one of the only countries in the world that was able to hold a LGBT Pride Parade this year. I remember in my own country, it was not possible because of some protests, and then the coronavirus came in. Even currently, Taiwan has just 7 deaths and around 100 active cases. But yeah, that's pretty good to see, I think. So we can go to how all the challenges that you mentioned, how systematically they can be tackled, and specifically with respect to activism and mentorship, how they can we can break those down maybe into smaller challenges and so on. Nathan, would you like to go first this time?
Sure. So not to, I like focusing on the positive as well. So, but there are challenges, and reading the news every day can get really depressing. Local news, international news, especially for LGBT community. But there are ways that all of these challenges are being addressed. So there's always hope. And in the absence of hope, we hope to create hope. So there's good people working to affect positive change. And it all starts somewhere. Here in Hong Kong, we're lucky to have many organizations that focus on uh, focus on queer concerns. Um, but I'll give you an example, just for the mentorship program that I'm on the committee for here, it started 11 years ago, and all it was at the beginning, its humble beginning, was one person who was really jazzed about doing something good and just got some friends together, created a model, identified some company resources, and started it, a pilot program. Will it work? We're not sure. But they were able to build it up, um, get other people involved, create processes and framework, and the program has now grown over these 11 years to what it is today. That's something we're proud of. We have many companies including it in their D&I, diversity and inclusion practices, and we're always searching for more mentors and mentees to participate in the program. So this is great, and this is hope, because it's a way to affect people on a personal level. What else? What other activism is being done? There's an organization here in Hong Kong called Pink Alliance, which is a massive umbrella organization that runs, that does many things to advance dignity, acceptance, and equal rights throughout community through engagement and public education. So aside from just doing activities for LGBT audiences, Pink Dot is one activity that's supposed to bring visibility to the community. But one of the things we realized was there are a lot of activities, including the local pride parade or local pride that attracts a lot of LGBT people. However, we're missing a lot of uh, straight audience, potential ally audience as well. And so there's been a lot of talk and focus on how to do activities to encourage more allyship and to engage with more allies, so that realizing that allies are the ones who are really going to be championing, that we really need to champion the cause within organizations, outnumbered a million to one. So that's part of the public awareness campaign that we've been setting up stages with speakers and events, and inviting those who are sympathetic and familiar to the cause to speak, and realize it's everybody. It's not just one activist, but it's everybody's mother, brother, sister, cousin who have a stake in equality. So from a personal level, what can be done in terms of activism and mentorship is just to get involved. Even if you set for yourself, something that says, okay, just one email a week. I'm going to email an organization and ask for more information. Or if I can just do one thing a week, that'll slowly build up into affecting change. And that, I mean, from the humble beginnings of our program to growing it to over 65 mentees, to watching other programs in Hong Kong develop as well. And just, it was a lot of little steps over a lot of time, and really listening with empathetic heart to everybody's struggles and coming together to address them.
Definitely, and this also goes in line with something that Diana had said earlier, which is specifically to allyship, which is if a person is supportive or is empathetic towards LGBT community, it's perceived as they are a part of it, and which need not necessarily be wrong, but it's not necessary exactly for you to be, you know, empathetic, that you need to identify as one of them. So yeah, I mean, uh, I agree. There are some really good points. uh, Shubha, what do you think?
Okay, I think Nathan said it all so well. So we also have a mentorship, a fellowship program, and we have mentors for that. Our fellows are basically grassroots level activists, and they are the hope that one draws from them is that they do such a variety of things. So, see, for example, some of our intersex fellows have written. Uh, he wrote a story about himself and some of the other intersex people that he contacted. One person is a trans man and is also a person with disability, and has started to look at disability, sexuality, that intersection of those. One other person did a lot of radio shows in the local language on LGBT issues. So each of them have taken up very different kind of ideas and have gone forward with it. And I think this is the spark I was talking about, that there's a lot of people with ideas and wanting to do stuff. One just has to do the minimum of opening a door, giving some opportunity, giving it some visibility, and then people will fly. I mean, you just have to do that much. That's the sort of minimum that one needs to do, and have faith, because sometimes things look like you're not sure if it's going to work. What Nathan was talking about is like an idea you're piloting. So you just need to have faith and have some patience. And sometimes, yeah, it bombs. Some things don't work, and some other things come out of it. But I think this is the hope that lots of new uh, things are happening all over the country. In small towns, it's moved away from, like I said, when we started and we said we should move to the small town. But now many things are happening already in small towns. So that's like a very hopeful sign for us. And uh, people have also been able to push back, use law, use judiciary, use religious leaders, use media. they've, people have been creatively tapping into these various sort of forums and pushing, pushing the envelope, getting the agenda on the table, saying, these are my rights. I'm not here for charity. You should give this to me. I think, and the norms are slowly changing. I mean, from 20 years ago, when no one wanted to associate with us, like even if they knew us, they would pretend not to know us because if you're working on this issue, then it was so taboo, to even talk to us who are working on the issue or whatever. So from that, people thought it was a trivial issue. People told me that this is not an issue, like Nathan was saying. This was not an issue in India. We have other things to worry about. There's so much poverty. Why are you doing this? So lots of, but slowly norms are changing. People are becoming more open. Uh, of course, there are many, many, many more things to do. Um, but I think things are going in a good direction in that sense that lots of fires have been lit in the 100 flowers are blooming. So I think that's a positive. And yes, I think the way forward would be solidarity with a range of other movements, which means that one learns, one also sheds one's own prejudice, one questions one's own privilege. It has to be that process of opening up, learning, questioning, thinking. That I think is the way forward. So, Randy, yes, with you on class solidarity and with you on going forward like that.
Yes, definitely. I always like to say slow progress is definitely progress. So as long as we are moving forward, it's great. So I think we've also gone over time quite a lot, and we have discussed a little bit about this. But if there's any particular story that either of you would like to share, uh, then you can go ahead.
I could share a couple. So we talked about all those challenges, but there's so many things to be thankful for, and so many examples of progress across different countries in Asia, across different cities. In like you like last year in Taiwan, the first nation in Asia to win the legal right to marry. Um, Hong Kong has seen many small victories as well, but most of them are in the courts. So if you look at Hong Kong over the past decade or so, say, how have there been steps forward in queer rights? It's because people keep suing the government. Sue the government, sue the government, sue the government, sue the government. And the courts have forced the government's hand. The government does not want to change at all. But in 2006, Lung versus Hong Kong government brought the age of sexual consent up. In 2014, another Lung versus Hong Kong government started a lawsuit for taxation and spousal benefits. He was a federal or a city worker. And last year, finally, it took 5 years to work through the courts. There's no marriage equality in Hong Kong, but now there's spouses can have equal taxation. The QT case, now you can get a dependent visa in Hong Kong. If you have a spouse, if you're working here, you can have a same-sex couple who's married in a foreign jurisdiction can sponsor their spouse. Before, you used to have to write up your spouse as your personal domestic worker that you're bringing with you from another country, and they couldn't work. And so now that just recently changed. This year, there was a ruling about public housing in Hong Kong. So the Hong Kong government lost their case to deny legally married same-sex couples public housing that they would any other normal company or couple. So in Hong Kong, the courts have really been how LGBT rights have been moving forward against a resistant government. It's been the best way to apply policy changes, but and there's many more cases before the courts right now. And hopefully that's having an effect on the hearts and minds, but it's all the local grassroots work from the organizations that are really making progress with the people, let alone the government and policy. But really, like Shubha said, getting out to those um, smaller towns and smaller districts and working with people there that might not have as much exposure or resources. Um, it's really heartwarming to see all the work being done here right now. And with our program, with our mentorship program, we're so thankful. We've reached over 500 mentees over the past 10 years. And, every time there's some negative thing comes in the news, we sit back and we say, that's okay, we're going to roll with it. There's so many things to be thankful for. So we don't lose sight of that.
That's so nice to hear. Shubha, is there any instance that you would
I
like
just
to
take
share?
a minute to say that, yeah, I think the success stories are about change in laws, change in policy, but also unexpected kind of support. For example, you've had religious leaders who've come out with, saying faiths against homophobia. We have worked with faith leaders, and they've some of them have come up with a stand that they're against homophobia. So that's very encouraging. We've had support from very unexpected sources like that. So I think those are the success stories. But I think most of all, it is people from the community who are there and saying, we're here, we're queer, we're proud, we're now you just and getting into various spaces. So there've been police, there've been people with the Air Force, there've been people with various spaces getting in and starting to talk about their issues and starting to voice it. The dairy farm that Parvesh mentioned. So just a range of opportunities and a range of things that people are taking and going forward. Doctors. So I think uh, it's like exciting times that way, that more doors are opening up and more possibilities. And uh, so, and thank you all for this really interesting. I so enjoyed hearing all of you. I mean, it was great to see that, they're here from very different cultural contexts and yet some similarities and, you know, resonance across the different countries. It's quite amazing. Thanks so much for having me.
Very true. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much for this realistic, optimistic uh, kind of panel discussion. It was really nice to uh, listen to your words and just in general talk about these things. Um, as we approach the end, how do you think we can help? Maybe your organizations or some other organizations in general, how do you think we are in AI can help?
Well, if I speak on behalf of Solidarity Foundation, I think one of the kind of work we're doing is placing people from more working class, socially and economically disadvantaged sections of the community into formal sector jobs. And we realize then if you have somebody inside who's keen to take this up, because we all know there's a DNI agenda, etc. But people keep telling us that we will take them if everything else being equal. And then I have to argue saying, but everything is not equal. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole purpose. If everything was equal, I wouldn't be here. Uh, so if somebody's inside championing and pushing for these openings, and this may mean that you have to talk to your vendor. It may mean you have, because oftentimes these jobs are not, you know, they're not directly with the company. They may be, but I think if people are willing to take that up and push from within, it makes a big difference. And if you can tell us how to, because the job scene does go by referrals. It does go by you knowing someone within who's taking your case. So I think that is a big support that we can get. The other thing is offering mentorship. So if somebody is willing to support young people from the community who are just getting into the corporate, don't understand the corporate world at all, and is intimidated, then at least to offer them some support and talk to them. That is a big sort of thing we would be very happy to have. So and so these, and then of course other kinds of support, like if there are skills that people can offer, you know, that we can, we're an NGO, and like all NGOs, we're all underpaid, overworked, and always short of cash. So, so if people can offer skills, then that's definitely something that we'll be happy to have. And then any other kind of engagement or involvement, or uh, you know, we're happy to do sessions with any one of you, etc. And so I think this is the thing, of course, besides you know financial contributions or other kinds of things, but these are also very important.
Yeah, I think Nathan will also have similar kind of contributions that he and his both organizations can expect from us. Um, yeah, I okay. That's great. We will definitely relay your message towards the other members so they can help. And we are way over time, so I'm not sure if we can take questions. Pranav, Aditya, I'm uh, we took so